All right, let's come back to the suttas because time goes very quickly here, just like samsaric existence goes on and on. So let's have a look at this next sutta, and this sutta is really about the benefits of developing kindness fully. When I use the word kindness, what I really mean is the word metta in Pali, often translated as loving kindness or love, but it can also just be translated as kindness or friendliness or goodwill. Goodwill is a good translation for metta, actually. The word love is very multifaceted and sometimes gives the wrong idea, whereas goodwill certainly gives the right idea. You have goodwill towards others. So these are the elements of escape, and the word that is translated as escape here is Nissāraṇa. Nissāraṇa, famously used in this very well-known triad in the suttas, the asada, the adinava, and the Nissāraṇa. Asada is the gratification or the good part or the enjoyable part of something. The adinava is the danger, the downside. And when you then balance these things up, you see the downside is more, then you go for the escape route. So these are the escape routes, elements of escape. He really means the 6 kinds of escape routes that we're going to look at, ways of escaping. And these are escapes from specific things. There are escapes from, you can escape from various things, escape from ill will or escape from whatever. This is what we're going to have a look at here, different escapes. And ultimately, an escape from all dukkha is, of course, the highest point here. So this is in the numerical discourse of the Buddha, the chapter number 6. The 6 is sutta number 13, elements of escape, the Nissāraṇa dhātu. Dhātu here is like properties or elements. So let's see what the Buddha has to say about this. Mendicants, there are these 6 elements of escape. What 6? So 6 areas in which we can overcome something else, 6 areas in which we can get rid of something which is negative or difficult in life. 6 elements or properties of escape. What are the 6? The first one, take a mendicant who says, I have developed the heart's release by love. Heart's release by love is the metta ceto vimutti. This is the Pali word here. Metta, we know, ceto is mind or heart, and vimutti is release or liberation or freedom. So someone comes to you and says, oh, I have developed the heart's release by love. I have cultivated it, made it my vehicle and my basis, kept it up, consolidated, and properly implemented it. So the purpose of this sequence of words is to show you what it means to properly develop metta. If you want to develop metta properly, this is what you have to do. It is quite demanding. It really means a lot of cultivation. So you have to cultivate it, you have to keep on developing, making it your vehicle. It means vehicle, in other words, making it your path, if you like, to awakening. This can become the vehicle, because if you develop love properly, or metta properly, you are, in a sense, developing the whole Eightfold Path in one go, because it leads to samadhi. So this can become the vehicle, the foundation for the entire practice of the Noble Eightfold Path, if you do it fully. But you can see how tricky this is, developing this fully. It means that you have to kind of do it all the time, at work, at home. Not when you sleep, you get the time off, but otherwise you have to do it all the time. This is why, if it is difficult, it's only difficult because of the commitment and the perseverance required. And so you always ask yourself, is my mind in the right way? How can I add more metta? How can I see my fellow BGF members with more kindness? These wonderful people who want to do Dhamma practice. What a wonderful thing that is. And so you look at people in a new way. You develop this outlook, this right view, this way of thinking about people and the world basically all the time. You go to work because you have to go to work, but at the back of your mind is always the Dhamma development, even when you go to work. When you write your emails, even then the Dhamma is at the back of your mind when you write those emails. And that makes you actually write those emails even better. This is kind of the beautiful thing about it. It doesn't detract from your work. It actually increases the quality of your work, increases the quality of your family life, increases your quality here at the BGF. Across the board, it increases everything. So this becomes what your life is about. And then the path develops remarkably quickly if you do it in this way. And then you can attain Nibbana in this life. Cradle person. I'm not sure, I don't know your names, I just called you cradle person. I don't mean any disrespect, but I... So just... so that's how you do it. So this is kind of what this is about. It's a very involved and very large commitment that is required here. Then you can get to this thing called the heart's release by goodwill or whatever. But then this mendicant says, well, I've done all of this, so that in theory it should be okay, yet somehow ill will still occupies my mind. So even though you've done all this, ill will occupies your mind. So that seems to be a problem, because if you have so much metta, how can you have ill will? So what is going on here? And this is kind of interesting, because this whole idea of the sutta is to show us to release from things. So here we have the release really from ill will is the purpose of this. So mind is occupied by ill will. It just means that occasionally you have ill will. It doesn't mean... so sometimes you get some ill will. They should be told, not so, Venerable, don't say that, don't misrepresent the Buddha, for misrepresentation of the Buddha is not good. And the Buddha would not say that. It is impossible, Reverend, it cannot happen that the heart's release by goodwill has been developed and properly implemented, yet somehow ill will still occupies the mind. For it is the heart's release by love that is the escape from ill will. And so the point here is that if you really develop the metta fully, you cannot have ill will anymore. Ill will is kind of completely gone from the mind. And so this is why we know the people around us who have developed metta more or less by seeing how much ill will they have. Someone who hasn't got much ill will, they have developed metta a long way. Someone who never has ill will, they have developed it all the way. And so what this means is that as long as you keep up that metta practice, as long as you keep entering samadhi based on metta, because it has to be samadhi, it has to be an overcoming of the hindrances, as long as you keep that going, you will not have ill will. It's not a permanent release from ill will. It can still arise later on once you slack off in your practice, or you don't do your meditation anymore, or whatever it might be. But while you are doing it, you will overcome ill will completely, and this is what is kind of amazing here. This has two consequences. First of all, it shows you the incredible power of some of these things. You find the complete escape from ill will. It's completely gone. It's very, very, very powerful. And also it shows you something else, and that is that there is a distinction sometimes between people who come across as incredibly pure. Incredible purity does not always mean profound insight. Not always. So people can be super duper pure, and they can be reborn in the Brahma Loka for eons, or this is possible for anyone. Any spiritual path can do this, whether you are a Muslim or Christian or whatever. This is where all the spiritual paths kind of go in the same direction, in a sense. But that doesn't mean you are enlightened. And this is where it gets very tricky to kind of fully understand what is real awakening from what is the development of these very profound states. But if you come from a right view and you can develop these kind of things, wow, you have gone an incredibly long way on the path. Going to this point, basically you are almost at the end of the path, because you have all the factors of the Noble Eightfold Path together. There's only a tiny little bit left and you will be out of this. So this is kind of the beauty of these things. So this shows you the commitment that you need to sustain. It's a lot of commitment, but everyone here can do it. This is the point. Because it is all about just learning to perceive in the right way, committing yourself in your daily practice, and it can be done. The more hardest thing is to kind of keep it going. The hardest thing is to inspire yourself so much that you are really interested in doing this all the time. Most people lose heart. They don't think it's working or whatever. That is the hardest part. The commitment is the hardest part. All right. Let's move on. This is the first of these 6 releases of the heart. Take another mendicant who says, I have developed the heart's release by compassion, the karuna ceto vimutti. I have cultivated it, made it my vehicle and my basis, kept it up, consolidated and properly implemented it. So now you have the compassion, seeing the suffering in the world, wanting to help out, having this strong urge inside to help the whole world emerge from suffering. Yet somehow the thought of harming still occupies my mind. Harming, or you can call it, this is the vihingsa vitaka. Vihingsa means harming, it means being non-caring, not caring really about others, being cold-hearted, being ruthless, being inconsiderate. All of these things are somehow, encompassed by this idea of vihingsa. And so if you have compassion and you see the suffering in the world, you just want to help people. You don't want to harm anyone. The idea of harming and not caring and not being of benefit becomes impossible if you do this fully. You want to benefit the world at all possibilities. You want to benefit the people around you. You do not want to harm anyone. This is kind of the whole idea of compassion, that you don't want to harm anyone. And so again, you have to develop this by seeing the suffering in the world, seeing the helplessness of other beings, seeing that it actually life can be very difficult. But again, be careful. Too much of this can also lead in the wrong direction if your mind isn't developed enough yet. So start off with metta. Metta is safer. Seeing too much dukkha can lead to sadness and depression and these kind of things. So metta is more important here. Anyway, so somehow the thought of harming still occupies our mind, and they should be told, not so, Venerable, for it is the heart's release by compassion that is the escape from thoughts of harming. It has been contracted. You cannot really have thoughts of harming if you have taken compassion all the way to the limit, all the way to the highest point. So it's kind of nice, so now you have no ill will, you have no thoughts of harming, you just want to be of benefit for everyone. If you can develop these things, wow. And remember that this is not just for other people's benefit. If you have these kind of mind states where you feel goodwill for the whole world, it's an incredibly pleasant mind state. You feel incredibly good about yourself. You feel really happy. And it's not an egotistical kind of feeling. Actually, the ego becomes quite small when you have a lot of metta, because you are encompassing all other beings as well. But it feels good to bring in the whole world into your mind and wishing everyone well. You feel really elevated. You feel like a deva. Actually, you feel beyond the deva. You feel like a Brahma. That's what you feel like, because the feeling you have now is precisely the feeling that leads to this kind of rebirth. So here you can see how it is, yes, you are focusing on others, but you are the main beneficiary of all of this. This is kind of the point. These things are extremely pleasant qualities of mind the further they are developed. Take another mendicant who says, I have developed the heart's release by rejoicing. The mudita ceto vimutti, the third of the 4 Brahma Viharas. I have cultivated it, made it my vehicle and my basis, kept it up, consolidated and properly implemented it. Yet somehow discontent still occupies my mind. Discontent is arati. Arati is what happens in the suttas when a monastic wants to disrobe. They have arati, they are discontent, they are dissatisfied. They are, disillusioned or whatever with the monastic life, and so they end up disrobing as a consequence. That's arati. But if you rejoice in the monastic life, how on earth are you going to disrobe? It's impossible, right? Because you are very content with it if you're rejoicing in it. And so rejoicing is always the opposite of discontent and dissatisfaction. Rejoicing is a feeling positive about something. Very often the mudita is here translated as altruistic joy and these kind of things, but actually rejoicing, I think, is a really good translation and a better one. This is Bhante Sujato's translation, because it is not just altruistic in the sense of being about others, it is also about your own rejoicing in yourself, in your own life, that you are doing well. Yay, I'm doing well. Because you know that you are living well, you know you're doing the right thing, you're rejoicing in the fact that you are heading in the right direction, that you are building up good qualities. So you rejoice in others and you rejoice in yourself, and the two things go together. And I was very happy when I saw that that is exactly how the Visuddhimagga, a lot of things in the Visuddhimagga are really nice, actually defines this, because it's not really defined in the sutras properly. And the Visuddhimagga says that the mudita here means both rejoicing in others' success or happiness or progress, and also in your own, both coming together. You cannot really separate these things. So the heart's release by rejoicing is actually, I think, a really nice translation. So I really appreciate this one by Bhante Sujato. I tend to be too negative. I tend to sort of criticize him, but actually I should rejoice more in his good translations. So this is what I should be doing. So so this is nice. Okay. So then you take that rejoicing all the way to the limit, and then you cannot be discontent with anything anymore. You're just rejoicing in everything in the world. Whenever there are good things to be rejoiced in, you rejoice. Of course, the idea here is to rejoice mostly in spiritual qualities, because you can rejoice in worldly things. You can rejoice when someone has success in their exams, or they are successful at work, or material well-being, or whatever. You can rejoice in those. There's nothing wrong with rejoicing in that. It's just understanding that it's very limited. It is very small happiness. It is not that important. But if you really want to rejoice in someone, when someone says, my meditation is going well, they say, wow, well done. Here is a high five for you. And then you really rejoice in those things. That is when it really makes a difference. Okay. All right, so discontent occupies my mind. They should be told, not so, venerable, for it is the heart's release by rejoicing that is the escape from discontent, from dissatisfaction, from being negative. All of these things are overcome by rejoicing in things. You can see why these Brahma Viharas are very powerful. You actually overcome all of these negative things. You get a very bright, beautiful mind by practicing these things in various ways. Most important one is metta, but all of these things should be practiced at least somewhat. And it also overcomes jealousy as well. I mean, one of the things about rejoicing in other people, in that they are successful, it overcomes the kind of feelings of jealousy or envy. And, these things are very human qualities that most people have to some extent. And so overcoming that is beautiful, because it's very yucky. Jealousy and envy are not nice qualities. And so you overcome the yuckiness of the heart by releasing it through these things. All right. Take another mendicant who says, I have developed the heart's release by equanimity. I've cultivated it, made it my vehicle and my basis, kept it up, consolidated it, and properly implemented it. Yet somehow desire still occupies my mind. So the idea of equanimity, the Pali word upeka, means literally looking upon. Yeah, so you are looking on something here. And you're looking on in a neutral kind of way. You're just observing it for what it actually is. That's the idea of upekkha. Just observing, just being with, just looking, but not being biased one way or the other. And so this idea, this ability to just look upon things without bias means that you don't have any desire, because desire is a bias of the mind. So you're just neutral, the mind is equanimous. There's no desire, nor is there any aversion, right? Aversion is just the flip side of desire. It's like the anti-desire, if you like, getting rid of things. With that, ill will as well disappears, because all of these things are related to each other. So the ability to just look on, is the ability to not have any inclination, biases of the mind or desires of the mind. So if you still have a desire, you haven't developed that equanimity properly. Equanimity comes in many degrees. It starts with sense restraint, and it ends with like the factors of awakening and the fourth jhana. That's where it kind of ends, and also this Brahma Vihara. They should be told, not so, Venerable, for it is the heart's release by equanimity that is the escape from desire. So that is the equanimity. Let us take a 5-minute break, and then we come back to questions in a second. Okay, everyone. So please fire away some questions if you have any. Which one?
Thank you, Ajahn. About the quality of rejoice, and usually what we learn in Dhamma class, the primary counterpart of rejoice is to overcome jealousy and envy, and then over here the sutta, the main counterpart is discontent. So I kind of find it hard to relate how this is related, but then I think I read a sutta. I cannot remember the exact characters. I think just now Bhante mentioned that discontent is usually mentioned when someone wants to disrobe, and that sutta, if I'm not mistaken, is Sakyan, Venerable Tisa, who wanted to disrobe, find discontent in holy life, and then the Buddha found out and summoned him and counseled him. And what stood out for me in that sutta is that the quality, the human quality of the Buddha is that the sutta ends with the Buddha saying, "Rejoice, Tisa, I'm here to counsel you." Yeah. So, it's still, I still cannot get. Is it related to? I don't know whether the word rejoice in that sutta is mudita in that context, because I did not look up. So, I'm still a bit confused how mudita and discontent is related.
Yeah. It is not kind of absolutely obvious. I would have to agree, but I think discontent here includes things like jealousy and envy. I mean, these are kinds of discontent, because it means that you want what someone else has, or you're not satisfied with with what you have, and so there is a relationship there. And I think within discontent, it includes these kind of negative qualities. But the rejoicing means that basically you are satisfied with something. You are satisfied with things. Wow, this is actually really nice. Are you satisfied with what other people do, with their success or their abilities? You're satisfied with yourself and your own life and what you're doing. So the idea of being satisfied with a monastic life is the opposite of wanting to live, right? So you can kind of, I think that is where kind of, to me, the distinction between the two gets crystallized, because you have mudita with your monastic life. It means you're satisfied with it, you're content with it, you're happy with it, you're rejoicing in it, rather than being kind of discontent and dissatisfied. So this is kind of one of the reasons why I brought that out, because that distinction to me becomes kind of reasonably clear anyway. So, but I know what you mean, and I was also having a little bit of trouble getting my mind around it. The word arati is it's not being content in the suttas usually is santutti, so it's a different kind of word. And rati in the suttas means to delight in something. So it's like you're not delighting in something. Yeah, it's a non-delighting in. It's like it's a kind of yucky or bad or the anti-delight. Anti-delight is one way of thinking about arati. Yeah.
Thank you, Ajahn.
Good morning, Ajahn. Could we go back to the previous sutta, because I have a question from that.
You want to see it?
No, it's just the meaning of to give up the fetters. I don't understand what that means.
Okay, what it means is that fetters are in Pali are called the sangyojana, and sangyojana means that it's like you are tied to existence, you're tied to the world, you're tied to the merry-go-round of samsara, you're tied to rebirth, you're tied to dukkha, to suffering, you're tied to everything, you're tied down. A fetter is just another way of talking about a bond, a tie, a rope, or a chain, or something like that holds you into place. And so the idea here is that because of our minds, the way that our minds thinks about the world, we become tied to the world. So we have to overcome and break those ties. That's what it means to be here, to be unfettered or giving up or breaking the ties. And when you break them, then you're no longer bound to samsara, and the rebirth stops as a consequence. So those ties are things like, being attached to the sensual world is one of the most important one of those ties. And other ones are things like Sakkaya Ditthi, which is like the view that there is an inherent person inside, and these kind of things. All right. Okay.
Ajahn, I have a question.
Please. Where are you? There you are. Okay, there you are. Okay, good. Yeah.
I would like to ask about your opinion on the research regarding rebirth. So is it like trustworthy? Because I don't see the scientific community coming up and saying, oh yes, there is rebirth, everybody please believe in it. So it's like sort of like an integral part of Buddhism, because if you don't believe in it, then you have less urgency. And then you'll be like, oh, I only have one life, so I might as well enjoy my whole life, because at the end I have to give up everything. So I enjoy it now, and then I give up later.
The rebirth is incredibly important. I agree with you. It really makes a big difference. Is the scientific research reliable? I think a lot of it is reliable, and not everything. Some of the things are a bit dodgy, like past life regressions is often a bit dodgy in my experience. But some of the things are very interesting, like some of the memories of small children remembering past life. I think it's very interesting. Why would little children lie? I mean, obviously there's something going on there. Little children just usually say they might lie if you put them on the spot. Did you do this? No, I didn't do that. But otherwise, why would they make up these stories? And sometimes the research into them, I think, shows that they are likely to be correct. Near-death experience point in the same direction. There's many things that point in that direction. The reason there is not a scientific consensus is because science is caught in a different paradigm, in a different world, in a different outlook. I mean, there is a very interesting books written about the philosophy of science and how science kind of progresses in leaps and bounds, and it's often constrained by the scientific outlook of a certain period, and everyone thinks in the same way, because we tend to think in the same way, and then there is like a breakthrough, and then kind of the whole thing shifts. And this is kind of how science evolves. You have things like the quantum mechanics and relativity and these things, and they cause the shift in the scientific outlook, and a new understanding emerges from that. And in the current way that a lot of science looks at the world, where consciousness is not really accounted for, from a Buddhist point of view, that's really problematic. How can you not account for consciousness? This is kind of the most important, the most fundamental thing from a Buddhist point of view. And in fact, I would say from all people's, from a person's point of view, it is the most fundamental thing. And so what it means is that we should remember the limits of science, how science progresses slowly, and very often it is bound by the consensus of opinions, and anything that is new will be challenged because of the consensus is different. And so you have to understand the limits. So the fact that some people are able to kind of break through that consensus and point to the limits is already very encouraging, and means that there is probably a change happening here. People who are working in kind of the frontiers of physics and neuroscience or whatever, many of them say that we are kind of going through a paradigm shift right now, where people are, obliged to take consciousness more seriously. I mean, this is just my opinions about this as far as I can see. I obviously am not an expert, but I think this rings true, that science works like this, because scientists, like everyone else, they are biased. They're just human beings at the end of the day. Yeah. To me, the most important evidence that there is rebirth is that the Buddha said there is rebirth. Yeah, and it's kind of funny because often we laugh at that, but actually there's a very, very serious point in that. If you go to school and your teacher tells you that, the history of Malaysia is like this, and 1 + 1 is 2, and, E = mc², or whatever it is that, you learn at school, all of these things. What do you say to your teacher? Do you say, oh, that's all rubbish? Or do you say, yes, sir, yes, ma'am? Usually you just accept it as a given. But the Buddha is far more reliable as a teacher than all of these other teachers. You might question the history of Malaysia. You might question 1 + 1 is 2, and in certain kinds of mathematics, actually, you can prove that 1 + 1 is not 2 if you know enough mathematics. But if you know enough mathematics, you can prove anything you want, basically. So you might question those things, but the Buddha is a far more reliable teacher. The Buddha is the preeminent teacher in the world. So if we trust 1 + 1 is 2, we should trust rebirth far more than that. The Buddha said this is true. The only reason we find it hard to accept the Buddha is because he lived a long time ago, because he doesn't have the same reality to us as our teacher in primary school. But actually, he is just as real. He is a real human being who taught real things. And when you become a Buddhist, you go to the Buddha's school, and he teaches you these things. So, of course, we should believe that if he said so. And this is one of the foundations of right view. Rebirth is absolutely everywhere in the suttas. If he said anything, he certainly taught rebirth. And so it's very fascinating, because one of the things you will kind of hear that, in the secular Buddhist circles in the West, in certain places, they have one thing they call the secular Buddhism, and I call it just secularism, because nothing to do with Buddhism, it's just secularism, that's what I call it. And they argue that you need to take Buddhism out of its cultural context, out of the kind of the cultural baggage, right? And kind of go down to the pure Dhamma that is kind of the insight of the Buddha. But they get it completely the wrong way around. It's the secular Buddhists, they are the ones who have the cultural baggage. Rebirth is not cultural baggage, it's the idea that there is no rebirth based on modern views. That is the real cultural baggage. Yeah, so it's completely upside down the way they have it. And so when the Buddha says there is rebirth, actually we should say, you are the number one teacher in the world. Of course there is rebirth. Actually, that is very, very powerful evidence that there is rebirth. There is no more powerful evidence than that. Actually, there is. The most powerful is the one you see it yourself, of course. But in the meantime, that is the most powerful one. So we need to change the way we think about things. Often we think about things completely the wrong way around, and then things start to fall into place as a consequence.
Good morning, Ajahn.
Good morning.
I'm referring to yesterday your explanation on compassion versus empathy, right? At one time, I thought I was practicing all the 4 Brahma Viharas. During what I had experienced very, very difficult time in the office, a lot of office politics and all these things. And I developed ill will towards one person.
Yeah.
So it was during that time, there was a lot of preaching, a lot of teaching on metta, bhavana, and all these things. Yeah. So I joined one of those meditation retreats. Yeah. And during the retreat, I tried very hard, send metta to that person. May you be well and happy and all these things. So I struggled for 1 or 2 hours, and until in the end I say, may you go to hell lah. that meditation was a complete flop until I approached another Bhante. He told me, your mind is not strong enough. You must have at least jhana, able to be able to radiate your loving kindness. So I asked him, what should I do? Then he said, you develop friendliness. So I said, okay, I tried. So I tried the other way, which is compassion. I thought it was compassion. So I was thinking, ayo, this fellow is going through a very bad time, very hard life and all these things. Then I developed a lot of sympathy, a lot of pity, really pity the person. Then I say, may you be well and happy, Then I was okay, I have some kind of equanimity, Until one day, suddenly he was, praised or rewarded something from the boss for something he did not do, I thought I should be like rejoicing, And I say, how come my mudita is not working, It's like I thought I was like practicing my, Brahma Vihara, and it was not working. Then I realized, it must be my conceit, It's like I can only feel loving kindness for the person when that person is really in a very, very bad shape, But if that person or anybody who is in a better position than me, I couldn't feel the mudita, So that I thought I was actually practicing properly, Then I realized it was not the right way, But eventually how I developed equanimity is that when the person resigned. Not resign, actually he was sacked because of misconduct, So I didn't rejoice.
You didn't rejoice, you had equanimity.
I didn't rejoice.
Well done.
But
Wow.
not seeing the person's face, suddenly I don't feel anything already, and that is final equanimity, So I think during that period I had actually experienced all the 4 Brahma Viharas, but in the wrong way, maybe.
Yes. No, that's good. I mean, you learned a lot through that experience, and sometimes we think that we should be able to do these things, but some of these things are really hard to do. And sometimes we expect too much of ourselves. We think that we should be perfect. Actually, of course you feel it's very hard to rejoice in someone who has been treating you badly. It's really difficult. So the fact that you can have compassion for that person already is marvelous. Yeah, so already you went a long way, and then you should rejoice when he was. That would have been us asking for too much. So sometimes we put the bar too high, and we can't. It's unreachable, And it's okay. You have to have compassion for yourself as well. These things are not easy to do. It takes a long time, a lot of development of the mind. So, in my opinion, you did incredibly well already. You did really, really well. And then based on that, you can take it even further. So sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.